and they were layered on top of them, you would end up having darker values and lighter values. And so we're going to start with a pretty simple shape, and the instructions kind of walk you through the different steps as well. If you want to start off drawing it as a straight-sided triangle, you can, but I find that it actually works pretty well to just kind of go in with a kind of a curved triangle that looks suspiciously like the Star Trek, insignia. So, but that probably just not only dates me, but identifies me as a geek. So we're going to use our hard pencil, so your 2H, to kind of lay out Oh, CJ, I see what you're saying. Well, maybe be a little bit clearer. I just thought that maybe you couldn't see it because my lines were light. I didn't realize it was because it looks small. So next time, tell me that it's because it looks small. So right now, so is it small to you? Because it should be light, because I'm using my 4H pencil. I'll do it a little bit darker. It just means I'm going to have to shade a little bit darker too. I'll zoom in. If I zoom in too much, then you're not going to see the whole thing. It's just a little bit light. Okay. Well, and it will be until I start shading, because again, I want you guys to really understand that you can't put tons of pressure down when you're doing your contour outlines, because then those lines are hard to get rid of. But I went ahead and did mine a little bit darker with the 4H. Hopefully it's somewhat noticeable. So I have my Star Trek insignia here. Can you see it now, CJ? Okay. And so what we're going to really do is just basically take the same shape and rotate, drawing it at different angles. And I'm going to have you just do 4. If you want to do more, if you're really up to the challenge, that's fine. But I'm going to kind of stick with 4 just to keep things pretty basic. And the key thing here is you want all of the shapes to overlap at some point. So if you look at the kind of the model image, you'll see that the very center part is the darkest part, because that's the part where the glass would be overlapping all together. And then it kind of radiates out with different values. So each of the values then becomes a little bit lighter. So we want to make sure that we are kind of doing that. Otherwise, it won't have the effect. So I'm going to have this central image kind of in the middle here. And then I'm going to go ahead and layer on my other images. So you want to make sure that when you do this, that they are big enough to kind of overlap each other. And you don't have to copy it exactly as what you're seeing, either in my demo or in the model. You can kind of be creative with it. But do use curved lines, just because that'll create a little bit more visual interest than the straight lines we've been playing around with. So I'm just kind of making sure that I have this overlap happening. And I'm varying my triangle shapes. Maybe I'll even do a little bit of an outside curve there. So right now I have 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to put one more in. So it ends up looking like a little abstract piece of art here. So just remember, doesn't have to look exactly the same as the model. What you're going to be demonstrating for me, the success criteria, is whether you're going to be able to get your different values from darkest in the middle, kind of radiating out to the lightest. So what I'm going to suggest here is maybe go ahead and, normally I don't have you start dark, but this middle section that is the most overlapped section, I'm going to go ahead and have you put that in as dark, and then maybe work your way out rather than go from light and work your way in, because I think it'll be easier to make sure you're getting the right areas. So remember, for doing our dark values, we're going to use our softest pencil, which is our 6B. And we're working, again, small strokes. And hold your pencil towards the back so that you can get more of it on there. Now mine's fairly small, so I'm not holding mine too far back because I want to work in thinner lines. But remember that the farther back it is, you can put in thicker lines because more of the lead is on the paper. So like I could kind of But because I don't want to go over the edge, I'm kind of pulling my hand in a little bit. And remember, if that's really not working for you, you can always hold it like this using your index finger. And I'm kind of doing the outline first here, just again, to kind of make sure that I've got a nice crisp edge. And I'm not doing this as dark as I'll probably go back and do it, just because I want to make sure I've got the rest of the values happening. So from the center point, I can see that the areas that overlap the most after this are kind of this here, kind of mark it, and this spot here, and this spot here. So those are going to be my second darkest value, because they're the ones that are also overlapping, but not completely overlapping like this one is. Okay, so when I do this one, I can still use my 6B because it's still going to be pretty dark, but I'm going to put less pressure on it. And if you're still kind of struggling with the pressure part of it, you know, just be aware it's a skill, and the more that you're practicing it, the better you're going to get at it. You've been training your whole life to put lots of pressure on your pencil when you're writing. So kind of unlearning that and being a little bit more conscious about it will help. So Max, so this is in this same slideshow, that information. I did go over it earlier this week, but anything that is a B is going to be soft, which I know doesn't make sense. You would think it would be S for soft, but it's B. So your 3B is a little bit harder and your 6B is a little bit softer. So as the number goes up, the softer it is. And then your H one is hard, because H actually does equate to hard. So that's going to be your soft, or your hardest pencil and your lightest pencil. And then your regular number 2 pencil, remember, is an HB, so it's smack in the middle. It's half hard, or half soft. And you can go up. I've seen as high as 11B. I only have a 9B. That's my highest one, and I almost never use it because it smudges like crazy. Like even the 6B smudges for me, because I have this tendency to wipe my hand across the page. Now, if I was working on something that was going to be like mostly black as far as the value, I might pull that out. But you should be able to see that there's, you know, a difference in value here. We've created our implied line with the contrast in values. So that's one of our big learning goals for this unit. Oops, I just went outside the edge a little bit. I'm going to erase that before I get too far along. So, and just be careful too, you know, I came across this yesterday. The other thing with the soft pencils is that they don't erase quite as well. It does tend to smear more than the lighter 4H pencil does, or the 2H pencil does. So just be aware to go in with a really light hand, because it might be hard to erase. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead. Actually, you know what? I think this one is also going to be that same value now that I'm kind of looking at it. And you'll see that I'm going back and I'm kind of darkening up the middle section as I'm going along, just to create a little bit more contrast. Hey, Matthew, thanks for joining us. So the stuff that we're working on is going on slide 7 in your binder. All right, so kind of doing my shading along the edges, working my way inward here, keeping up those circular motions. So just like with this middle one, I'm not going to do this the full value that I think it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and keep it like that and then work out, and then probably go back and keep on adjusting the value as I go along. I am switching over to my 3B now. All right. So remember this, so this one's kind of medium, a little bit more than medium softness. And so kind of looking at this, I'm going to see here that it looks like what's overlapping the most is maybe this section here, and this section here, and this one here, and maybe, yep, this one here. Okay, so that's going to be my next value. So again, I'm going to go in on this, and I can see already that there's not much contrast here, right? So I'm definitely going to have to darken up that second darkest value to make this work. I don't know if you can see it too, but because I went in pretty darkly with my 4H, it created a groove in the paper. And so I'm seeing this like white little ghost line showing up. So I'll probably go back and fill that in, but I have to do that with the point of my pencil. So I'm going to wait until the end to do that. So be careful with that 4H, even though it's light, it does make an imprint on your paper if you're pushing too hard with it. Okay, so I'm going back and darkening that up a little, which means I have to go darken up the middle section a little bit. So, you know, just like I've said all week, this requires a little bit of patience. It takes time, so don't rush. And we're working in layers. So it's not like you finish a section and you're done. You go back and forth and kind of add as you go along. So I'm working in pretty long ovally circular movements here just because this is a bigger section, so I can go a little bit faster. If you are struggling to have control with the smoothness of your shading, work in smaller circles because that's going to give you more control. And it lets you blend a little bit easier than kind of these big strokes. So again, not a ton of contrast between these two. So I'm going to go ahead and darken this up a little bit. So by the end of this, you'll have something that looks like layered colored glass. It's not the most, you know, standout optical illusion, but you'll get some good practice with shading and being able to figure out different values, because it can sometimes be hard kind of judging and kind of building up until you get the right value. And it's important to kind of really be able to observe that and use your artist's eye to figure that out before, you know, you start really working with color. Because color just totally changes the game, because different shades of colors, right, as well as different hues, read as different values. So like a bright yellow is going to read lighter than, say, a bright green. So if you've already trained your eye to really discern value, it's going to make your life easier when we do color theory, which, by the way, we're doing second semester in drawing too, if you're sticking around with me. All right, so I'm going to darken this one here a little bit. It looks like, so this area to me is probably still part of this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and also get this other side of that triangle shape. It's okay to change the angle of your pencil. It helps build up the values, right? If you're kind of doing your circles in a different direction. So don't be afraid to move your sketchbook around. Don't be afraid to move your hand around. You got to do what's going to work for you. All right. So that's really just going to leave us then with our lightest value. So I'm going to go ahead and move to my 4H because I don't have a 2H, but you guys are using your 2H. And this can just be really super light. And again, I'll go back to that next value that I just finished up and kind of darken it, make sure I've got enough contrast. And I don't need to switch back to the 3B. I can just keep on using the hard pencil. I'm going to go ahead. I'm kind of filling in at this point now, going back and filling in those little gaps there that were created by the pressure of the pencil earlier. Do it on this side too. So for this one, I am going to go ahead and hold my pencil pretty far back. And I know that's kind of off camera, but I'm holding it way back over here because this is a pretty large section for me. And so, you know, I feel like I can go pretty fast because it's a bigger section, although not too fast because I don't want my strokes to kind of show up and be streaky. And it's just kind of a feather touch. Like you could even visualize your pencil as a feather. And like if you're trying to tickle somebody, how light would you do it? Right, that's kind of the same amount of pressure you want to put here. So fun fact, did you guys know this, that the American Academy of Pediatrics now says that tickling is like should be not something that people do to little kids. So that's actually supposed to don't take it too literally, CJ. No, don't actually tickle people with a pencil because I'm pretty sure that might hurt. But if you visualize the pencil as a feather, so like if you were to tickle somebody with a feather, how light would you do it? Not that I'm recommending that you go tickle anybody with a feather or a pencil for that matter. Nice reaction, Judd. Now, because I drew my outlines, my contour outlines a little bit dark so that you guys could see them, you're going to tell that is a difference in the value and we're getting that edge. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to be tricksy about this, is I'm going to put some shadow on the outside of it, like it's sitting on top of something. So you got a spear. Well, trade that spear in for a feather. So is the feather mightier than the spear, just like the pen is mightier than the sword? Are we mixing metaphors there a little bit too much? So notice just going kind of back and forth, just building up layers here, making sure the values are going to have enough contrast between each other. And again, I'm going to go in and kind of fill in. Actually, I might do this with my 3B. These little grooves and white spots are starting to bug me. I'm going to go ahead and fill those in a little bit. So what I'm doing here, if you run into this so that you know how to do it, is I am like super, super lightly just kind of using the point of my pencil to kind of fill in that groove a little bit. Just enough to make the white line go away. And that groove is really, really narrow. So even my pencil here doesn't want to go in. So I'm going to sharpen it. I feel like, John, you totally get my sense of humor. Maybe. I'm going to go in and actually darken up my dark spot here. Really, really lay it down. And I'm doing it with my 3B. I really should probably be doing it with my 6B. But even the 3B gets pretty dark. And get that stupid groove there filled in. There we go. A little bit better. Okay, so I'm going. What? Are you calling my jokes dad jokes? At the very least, they're mom jokes. It's okay. I'm a mom, so I guess it's to be expected. But you know what? Having a sense of humor goes a long way. Like, thanks, CJ. Thanks for jumping on that bandwagon there. That's good. I'd rather have a corny sense of humor than no sense of humor at all. All right, home stretch here. Just darkening the edges here. Now you'll notice in the sample one, they kind of have slightly darker edges, so they don't necessarily go and reshade every part of it. And I don't know, I mean, that is a look. And I guess if the glass was curved, maybe that would be what it actually looks like. I haven't actually broken glass to kind of layer it to see what the actual picture of it would look like, but maybe. Is it windy out where you guys are? I'm like looking at the trees outside my house and hearing the wind, and it's pretty blustery. No? Lucky you guys. So you notice I'm working big again. And if you were like standing over my sold shoulder, you could probably see a little bit better that I'm not doing a great job of really getting this blended. I'm going to have to go back and make sure I get all those gaps in so you don't see my individual strokes. Because that's kind of the, if you're getting a lot of streakiness in your shading, it's probably because you're going too fast and you're using inconsistent pressure. So, and normally in the classroom, I'd be walking around after I demo this and I'd be kind of, you know, giving you pointers on your technique. And I obviously can't do that right now. But if you feel like you're struggling, you can send me a picture of what you're working on, or you can stay on here, you know, after everybody's gone and show it to me in the Google Meet, and I will give you pointers. Trying to make sure that even though we're doing this all remotely, you're still getting what you need from me. Yeah, well, that's what I'm concerned about a little bit, is that my Wi-Fi might go MIA. We'll see. You would think so. I live in the middle of a city, so you would think that that wouldn't be an issue, but apparently it is still. All right. Okay. So, you know, because I did these lines really dark, they're still showing up. So I could go ahead and do just a little bit of a cast shadow if I wanted to, just to kind of make it look like it's more intentional. But if I do that, I have to make sure that the cast shadow is always on the same direction. So like I'd have to pretend my light source was over here, kind of bouncing off of it. So I don't know how much of that I'll do. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to darken. And I'm just darkening with my 4H because it won't go on and make it as dark quite as fast as my other pencils will. So I can be a little bit slower about building up the values just in case I end up going overboard a little bit with it. What I'm just doing is I'm kind of redefining the edges here and making sure that there is contrast between each of these different levels. And then I'm done. And if you've been doing it along with me, hopefully that means that you are close to being done as well. Okay, Ben, thanks for letting me know. So does anybody have any questions about this process or about implied line, about what values are? This would be a great time to ask me any of that. All right, if not, then here's the deal, guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording because I think I'm done here. And let's see.